Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J. What's poppin'?
What's popping with you, man? You know, I blink, I look, and I guess there was a Team Grand Prix like a block from your house, and pretty good finish for you, man.
Yeah, a block from my house is generous, given that it was by the airport. Denver definitely. When they have it downtown, it's real close to my house. When they have it by the airport, nobody really gets that close to Denver, unfortunately. But yeah, our team, Michael Simon, Matt Sperling, myself, they called me in last minute, and we played some sealed deck. I played some 5-color control. We busted it out. But the real game here is Guilds of Ravnica Standard, and the evolution, like compared to when we last chatted, the evolution has continued, and in fact, the Mitgo. The last 2 weeks of Mitgo results have been getting progressively more and more dominated by Golgari. And this past weekend, there was a PTQ where Golgari just ran the tables. 3 out of the top 4. What did they have? Like 5 out of the? No, they had 6 of the top 8.
Top 8, I think. Yeah.
Right. And so this definitely seems like the deck in question. The deck to beat,
Oh, I'm so excited for Standard. I love it when the format is hardening around a deck like this. Like, I hate it when the format is hardening around a deck like Blue-White Spirits, right? Or something like super overpowered fast combo. But like when the format is hardening around a deck that has progressive card advantage and both players can they have time to develop their game plans. That's a nice place to play. That's a nice place to try to angle decks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and this deck is definitely an extreme version of that. This is, this deck, it's out of 60 cards in the main deck, literally, and this is no exaggeration, literally 25 of them are a 2-for-1. I
appreciate it a lot.
So, to start with, this is definitely a extreme deck for grinding that uses the not completely alien package of Seekers, Squire, Merfolk, Branchwalker, and Jadelight Ranger to both keep the whole 2-for-1 thing going, but also to help stock the graveyard so that Find Finality, Golgari, Find Broker, Zoni Thousand-Eyed, like all these cards are getting a little bit of extra mileage. And then it has a top end with 4 Doom Whisperer and then 5 Vraskas, 2 Vraska Golgari Queen and 3 Vraska Relic Seeker.
There's so much stuff here. Actually, the thing that's interesting to me about kind of this early, just 2 or so weeks into the format rise of Golgari is that even though we're talking about some 2-color decks that have so many cards in common with one another, there's actually quite a bit of variation intra-archetype.
Oh, yeah. Like, this winter didn't actually play any copies of Vivian Reed main, and the majority of people have actually been long on Vivian Reed.
Yeah, I'm actually scratching my head at this deck a little bit because Tixis played, like you said, he went deep. They went deep. 3 Seeker Squire, in addition to 4 Jadelight Ranger and 4 Merfolk Branchwalker.
Well, and a District Guide to round it out.
Yeah, but accommodating 2 Wild Growth Walker main deck to go with all that exploring, but then Tixis didn't go all the way. Like, I would have expected double Wild Growth Walker in the sideboard when you're doing all this work.
Well, there's one more in the sideboard.
Yeah, only one more though. I feel like Tixis
I think
like this is like 9.5 yard line here.
See, I really like Wild Growth Walker right now anyway, just because I think that red is quite good, and I think you got to, if you're going to have a lot of respect for the red deck, you got to be able to go up to 4 Wild Growth Walkers if you don't already have a main deck. Is Moment of Craving even as good as the 4th Wild Growth Walker? In this deck?
I don't think that the 3rd Moment of Craving is better than the 2nd Wild Growth Walker. I do not.
Yeah, I'm talking about the 4th Wild Growth Walker total, though.
Yeah, I'm the 2nd Wild Growth Walker in the sideboard, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be long on Wild Growth Walkers if I were doing something like this, you know.
So here's my experience. I've played a lot of the red deck already with the new format. And the red deck is like pretty hot and cold. It's like multiple different decks depending on which cards you drew, right? So the deck is a completely different deck if you have Experimental Frenzy in play or not, just as an example. And one of the things that's so strong about certain versions of Golgari is that because they have cards like Assassin's Trophy, which Tixis only played 2 of, and like you said before, other folks are playing Vivian Reed main deck, long on Vivian Reed, they can really contain that part of the red deck. They're just like, all right, I'm just going to remove you built your entire momentum to get to this point so you can start dumping out 1 and 2 casting cost cards, 3 cards a turn or something. They can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, like, for instance, look at Phelan, the 5th place list. Their black-green deck had 4 Assassin's Trophies, 2 Vivian Reed's main deck, 2 Vraska Relic Seekers for 8 straight-up answers to the Experimental Frenzy.
Yeah. So, and then in addition to, just some cast downs, which are good in that deck versus fast red beats, right? Like, that's just a great card to throw at, say, a 3 casting cost 3/3 that might be interacting with your 2/1s. But, just to go back to Tixis' deck, one of the things that I like Wild Growth Walker so much in this deck, if you were going to commit to it, is the red deck is pretty bad against just any creatures that have 4 or more toughness. For a couple of reasons. Like, either they have to super commit to specialized cards like Coil or Fight with Fire, which they're loath to do main deck, right? Because those cards are kind of, not very good at going to face. Either they don't go to face ever or they go to face in only extreme situations. But once you have Experimental Frenzy in play, like you become suddenly really bad at lacing 2 burn cards together, right? Like before it's in play, you could just put 2 shocks together, a shock and a lightning strike, take
that's a good point.
But it's so erratic. Like if you have a shock on top of your deck and you want to throw it at a 3/4 or something, you have no guarantee you can complete the play. So that becomes it's so different.
But yeah, Lava Coil out of the sideboard, obviously it helps a little bit in this experience, but it's not like Lava Coil is the most natural pairing with Experimental Frenzy anyway. But I think that your point is very salient about chaining together spells. Like more realistically, what's going to happen is you're going to see that shock or that lightning strike on top of your deck. You're just going to swing with the team, give them one of your creatures to start with, and aspire to take it down. One card that I think actually kind of is interesting in the context of Experimental Frenzy is Goblin Crater Maker. The fact that it's sitting in play as an implied shock that you can use while you have, I think that's it's like I mean, if it were a better rate, I think that the Direct Current would be interesting for the same reason, but I just think it's just too inefficient. But I think Goblin Crater Maker is just an excellent pairing with Experimental Frenzy for giving you options even when you're in a frenzy.
That's a great point. I mean, and that guy he's just pretty close to being pretty good anyway, right? So
yeah, I think he's solid anyway. I think you get the Karn equity. There are a few artifacts and just a 2/2 for 2. Even, and who knows, maybe you have a Goblin Synergy, but it's not like there's a million 2-drops in red you want to play. And at least it doesn't die to a Chain Whirler.
Oh no, the Viashino 2/1 is top. That's top of the pile for them right now. That's our alpha 2-drop.
But that actually brings up a great point. I think that once the red decks are all built around a card that's a 2-cost 2/1 that does 2 damage, the prospect of playing with Wild Growth Walker, where at a baseline it's a 1/3, but if you can do it even a single time, you're so far ahead of the game against these Viashino Pyromancer decks. So I'm a big fan of the Wild Growth Walker right now.
I mean, if you just play the Walker on turn 2, I mean, they have a window, right? But if they take their entire turn...
Well, sometimes. They have a window. They do if you play it on turn 2.
Yeah.
I just think that this deck plays with so much card draw and so many little 2-for-1s and stuff. There's going to be plenty of times where they're going to tap out on turn 3 to Chain Whirler or whatever, kill your Merfolk Branchwalker or whatever, and then you're just going to go Wild Growth Walker... and then in the same turn play a Seeker Squire and have it buffed immediately up to too big to go down easy.
Yeah, and don't forget you gain that other little clause there about 3 life, which is absolutely devastating.
I think the 3 life is crucial because I think that one of the only ways that you can really, like, one of the angles that's important to be able to cover is when your opponent gets into a frenzy and their deck has 4 shocks and 4 lightning strikes and risk factor, and like that's a lot. Like, they don't even have to go through it. Plus Chain Whirler and Fanatical Firebrand, the 1 damage from each of them, it all adds up. And I think that it can be easy to underestimate how much burn this deck can put together when they get into a frenzy. Remember, one of the bottlenecks for Experimental Frenzy is usually that you don't get to pick when you're going to hit that land that's the whammy, right? But there's going to be times where there's just a bunch of spells in a row, and you're also kind of bound by how much mana you have. Well, Runaway Steamkin provides help on both fronts. It gives you a sort of battery that you can draw on in the spots where you really need it. Like, oh, I just so happen to flip a 3rd spell in a row. At least I have the Steamkin, right? But also, the Runaway Steamkin is giving you a rebate on all your red cards.
Yeah, enormous. So I think that the people who are going to specialize in red, at least early, are going to get so much return on practice. Like folks oftentimes like, oh, okay, I have some transferable skills and I'm going to try to play this archetype. But I found myself just missing opportunities to use the Steamkin. And I think like when you have exactly 3 counters on a Steamkin, you can take the counters off and then you're back to a full counter on the Steamkin immediately with your first spell. That's the thing that it's you know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like you were already discounted by 1. And that's real important when you have Frenzy in play. Like I think I've played over 11 spells in a turn with Frenzy and 2 Steamkins in play before. But you need to do some hoop jumping, right? Like I happen to have like a flip treasure map and another treasure map in play, and I did stuff like cast multiple risk factors, like to keep clearing the land off the top of my deck. So those were among the spells that I was getting. And then I just sacrificed my Frenzy and then cast all these sweet cards that my opponent put in my hand. That was because like once you have the Frenzy in play, you're like, all right, risk factor, and they're like, well, draw cards. I don't want to take 4, right? You can't use the cards in your hand, right? But at some point, you have like 10 cards in your hand. And you're like, oh, sacrifice the Frenzy, get ya. So, Patrick, what do you think of Doom Whisperer in Tixis's deck? It's 4 of here, but this is a card that is often played like not at all in the Golgari decks.
Yeah, I like it as a change. I think it's going to end up really depending on what, how much is everybody else having to adjust to all these 2-for-1s, because like obviously Doom Whisperer is not necessarily at its best against Assassin's Trophy, but like if everybody else is not wanting to play with spot removal because of how many 2-for-1 creatures there are out there, Doom Whisperer is quite the paradigm shift. It's also just a really, really, really powerful card.
Oh yeah, 6/6 for 5 with several awesome abilities. Kind of can't go wrong.
Yeah, and it's funny, but it actually does combo with Wild Growth Walker. Like, I'm not suggesting that you're literally going to Doom Whisperer all your life away most of the time, but I'm saying that, like, when you're paying life with Doom Whisperer, it's nice having Wild Growth Walker offsetting it. Because it's kind of nice to be able to Doom Whisperer. Like, even in a normal case, you want to use Doom Whisperer's ability every turn in general just to be able to find some good stuff to keep going.
Well, actually, if you've got Wild Growth Walkers in play, like, Doom Whisperer can keep you just flush with Explore guys. And, if those Explore guys are Jade Light Rangers, you're going to be getting a ton of life back.
Yeah, I also like that Doom Whisperer lives through Finality. Out of the Find Finality.
Naturally, yeah.
Right. So you can, like, even put the counters on somebody else and save it, like, say, a Jade Light Ranger. But you've got Doom Whisperer, too, so you actually just have a board presence.
Like it also. I think that Find Finality is one of the cards that really makes Golgari in the metagame, because the the deck is kind of there. You know, it wants Find because Find is so good with all these 2-for-1 guys that it could be going to the graveyard. But Finality,
those are just mana efficient.
Yeah, but Finality just gives you this out to super go wide decks like green-white. Like, you don't really have to do anything extra. It's just there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's important to know you can do stuff like, for instance, if you're playing against somebody who's got creatures that are too big to just -4/-4, you can actually like attack with all your creatures.
Yep.
And then Finality. You know, and actually have it be part of a 1-2 punch to actually take down 5/5s or 6/6s.
Yeah, they might not see that coming.
I really like Find Finality, and I don't think I would only play 2. Like I'm not. I think it's just so on plan.
Yeah, my initial build, at least of Golgari, had 4 in the main deck. I just think Find is so good with the Find Broker and Jadelight Ranger and just like all these guys, Chupacabra, you're just trading. In some cases, the Explorer guys are actually just putting fuel into the graveyard for you.
Yeah. And it is, you know, it is true that out of the 6 Golgari decks in the top 8, none of them played 4 Find Finality main deck, but a bunch of them played 3. And I would try 4. Why not? What if it works? What if it's good? Like, are you telling me the District Guide is so good that you need to play the District Guide instead of the 3rd Find Finality?
Yes, I am telling you that. You're
going to play one District Guide?
All the District Guides. I mean, no, I had way more than one District Guide in every build that I made. So
how? If you're playing 12 Explorers, how do you have this room? You're not playing Plaguecrafter, are you?
I didn't have Plaguecrafter in mind, but I think that you would obviously want Plaguecrafter in some builds.
Yeah, so Tixis did not have Plaguecrafter. However, a bunch of the other versions did. Tixis obviously just ravenous Chupacabras. But, like, for instance, Sneaky Homunculus had 1 Plaguecrafter main. But, let me see. There's one of these. Phelan had 2. LVDL had 2. And Autumn Lily had 3. And Plaguecrafter, obviously, a nice combo with some of these 2-for-1s. You've already got a little bit of value. Like, say you Seeker Squire and it's a 1-2 and you draw a card. You sack the 1-2, and so you've upgraded your Plaguecrafter, but your Plaguecrafter is also serving as a removal spell that has utility against Planeswalkers. Like they tap out for Teferi and you can actually get them. But then also it's a removal spell you can get back with Find Finality that naturally finds its way to your graveyard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could just be sacrificing the Plaguecrafter yourself and it's going along with Find Broker, all the, you know, or you're sacrificing another creature. Maybe you want to sacrifice Jadelight Ranger because you actually want to try to draw 2 cards next turn or something, right? Like that's an option for you.
Yeah. Yeah, the ability to sack your creatures so that you have juicy triggers for Find Finality to get them back. It's kind of interesting. Is there any other mana creature you could really be playing besides Llanowar Elf, or is it just you hit all your land drops because of all the Explorers, but you're not really accelerating?
Well, I'm actually just looking at Autumn Lily's deck for a second. Autumn Lily didn't play any Llanowar Elf, right? So I guess just complete reliance on Explore guys and District Guide to just hit your land drops here. Obviously, Autumn Lily's deck is way less vulnerable to Chainwalk, to Goblin
Chain Whirler,
Chain Whirler, but not like immune, right? Like when you're 2-for-1ing with your Merfolk Branchwalker, it's going to become vulnerable to Chain Whirler, but there's no direct, like always get this guy vulnerability with Llanowar Elf in this deck.
Yeah, and in fact, Misplaced Ginger in 9th place also is playing the no Llanowar Elf style.
So
actually 7th place as well, LVDL. So maybe the Llanowar Elves are but it is, I mean, Phelan and Tixis and like the amount of Llanowar Elf decks at the top, Sneaky Homunculus,
But I think it's like they're playing slightly different decks, even though their color combinations and their card choices are so similar. Like if you compare this to Tixis's deck, if Tixis comes out with the first turn Llanowar Elf, Tixis can go like turn 2 District Guide or Jadelight Ranger, which is just better.
You can't keep lumping that one District Guide in there, man.
I'm just saying Tixis, especially when Tixis draws multiple Llanowar Elves, can do stuff like deploy Vraska Relic Seeker faster or get Doom Whisperer online. And even though it's a 2-for-1 matchup, like when you have a ton of extra card advantage, what do you want but more mana availability, right? And then from the mid game, they're not going to trophy your Llanowar Elf. It's just they're getting value for you.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree.
I think it's actually probably really good in the mirror.
The Llanowar Elf?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think you're totally right. Yeah, I think it's excellent in the mirror. I just don't see why you wouldn't just main deck 4, and if you want to board him out against Chain Whirler, so be it.
But I've played Llanowar Elf and Golgari decks in the Chain Whirler era, and I found I didn't really want to side it out. The thing is, obviously you get a liability against Chain Whirler, but the games where it does what you want, you're just far enough ahead oftentimes because you have so many 2-for-1s that you just live with the Chain Whirler 2-for-1. Because whatever you played out early and fast is just meaningful a lot of the time.
Other variations of this black-green deck, or variations, I guess, within the black-green deck, the Eldest Reborn is another question. Instead of Doom, if you don't play Doom Whisperer, you can play some amount of the Eldest Reborn. I think the Eldest Reborn is a very powerful card. I don't really know that it adds a whole lot to this deck.
Well, it's like a 3-for-1, right?
Better.
Yeah, it's like even more than a 2-for-1. And the thing is, like,
but that's
chapter 3 on that efficient saga. Well,
yeah, but I just mean that, like, when you so here's a different way of putting it. The Eldest Reborn is like wears down your opponent, wears down their hand, wears down their threats, and then it gives you a victory condition even if your deck's light on victory conditions. Well, the Golgari deck has plenty of victory conditions, plenty of card advantage already, and it's not set up for depleting your opponent's resources the way a deck with a lot of removal would be. Like, if you make your opponent discard a card and you just have, like, if you have 5 creatures and they have 5 creatures and you make them discard a card, it just doesn't mean the same thing as if you were trading your removal spells for their threats and you eventually use the Eldest Reborn to finish them off. So I think it's a powerful card. I don't think it's at its best here. It might be good enough to play, but I don't think it's at its best here.
I think it feels very on theme for Golgari.
Just for 2-for-1 grinding?
Yeah, I think that, like, depending on some of the very specific choices that you make, like whether you play Llanowar Elf or how many Assassin's Trophies you have, if you're going to choose to play Cast Down, stuff like that. One of the things that I think is probably very comforting to some of the Golgari players is that when they draw a spell, there's a high level of confidence that spell is going to be worth more than one card, and that, like, that's just the thing that keeps them going. Right, like, all right, we're going to go a little bit further. We're going to go a little bit further with our next card. And that those cards are chaining together. And so many of them, like, specifically Find Finality, Golgari Find Broker, and the Explore guys all working together, they're like snowballing those advantages. So I think, like, Eldest Reborn is just like this the very, very, very good version of Merfolk Branchwalker that also taxes the opponent's hand. I think that that is an important dimension. The deck doesn't do anything to tax the opponent's hand in the main deck. Like, obviously, it could have, like...
Yeah, but the first card you make your opponent discard is not worth very much.
I think it depends, right? Like, if your opponent was trading 1-for-1 removal with you, like, up until that point, it might mean a lot.
Then they would already have lost, because your deck is nothing but 2-for-1s.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right, and I think that it's still a dimension, an on-theme dimension for the deck that it doesn't otherwise have. I mean, obviously not everybody played it, right? So there's, jury's out on the Eldest Reborn.
Yeah. I'm just saying from a theory standpoint, card is powerful. Maybe it's just so good that you're just supposed to do it. I'm just saying that I don't think it's as good here as it would be in some other The Eldest Reborn decks.
Yeah, like
it could easily be good enough to do, but I just think that in like some kind of a black-blue deck or a Grixis deck, or a deck with a bunch of removal spells is going to put the Eldest Reborn to better use.
Sure.
The other variation. Oh, the other thing is just that you're competing. I think that like you only have so much room for stuff like Doom Whisperer, Vivian Reed, the Eldest Reborn, like Izoni and Vraska 6. Like you've got like a lot of top end and things that are competing for your top end, and that's to say nothing of the notion of just playing more Golgari Fine Brokers and just being a little lower to the ground.
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that is allowing Golgari to be so dominant early on is kind of this gentleman's agreement where so many people at the top tables must be playing Golgari, because this is a pretty chunky deck, right? Like some of the players don't even have 1-drops. Like you kind of be like, all right, I need to draw my first 3 lands before I do anything, and I might need that 3-drop to get me my next land because I'm just glutted at 4s and 5s, right? Like. Like, what if you just... I think there's probably a reasonable percentage of the draws that they keep don't do anything in the first 2 turns, right? You'd agree with that, right? And that their third turn play is just, like, wholly unspectacular.
Well, I think that if they don't have a great third turn play, I got to wonder why they kept a hand with no Wild Growth Walkers, no Llanowar Elves, no Seeker Squires, no Merfolk Branch Walkers, and no Assassin's Trophy.
I mean, I don't know. Like, what if they thought their opponent was also Golgari, right? Like, they make an assumption they have time, right?
That's true.
But like Jade Light Ranger draw 2 discard is horrible if the opponent already has 2 guys in play and then just Chain Whirlers your Jade Light Ranger and then trucks in for 3 or whatever.
Yep.
But I think like that's a keepable hand. You're like, oh, if they're Golgari, this hand is great. If they're not, I might get run over.
Man, when I see these decks, I wonder about some of the like ways that they could be just a tiny little bit faster. Like maybe it's playing more cheap cards. Maybe is there really no other accelerator they can play? I'm not saying that it needs to be like Llanowar Elf good, but like do they really not want like? I mean, is it just like a non-starter to play like 1/3 tap for a green?
I've been trying the circuitous route, like so. Not necessarily in Golgari, but in other green decks. Do you hate that?
I don't know, man. Dude, I'm not even on board with District Guide. And you're trying to tell me, you're trying to talk me into circuitous. I think you can circuitous route if you're like ramping into 7s. I mean, yeah, you can play Vraska a turn ahead of schedule, but like, is that really enough? Is that really enough to be worth the lack of board presence on the most critical turn of the game?
That's a good question. I think,
like by contrast, some of the go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's just a couple things. It depends who you're playing against, right? If you're playing against Golgari, Circuitous Route's a very powerful play, right? If you're playing against Red, that might just be an invitation to take 6. It depends. I think like if you're reading the format to be very green dominated, then I think that Circuitous Route is very attractive.
But what are you ramping into?
Me personally, I'm ramping into Expansion Explosion. So
so that's a slightly different build.
Yeah, no. It's obviously not. I mean, not just Golgari. I'm saying just trying to experiment with green. And obviously, a card like Expansion Explosion or Banefire or Fight with Fire, like cards like that could go way over the top of just people just punching each other with 2-for-1s. Is I think that's the next step in the metagame, right? Like everybody's just going 2-for-1s. You gotta attack at a different layer. So I don't know. It's just something I'm messing around with. I'm not sure that Expansion Explosion is the best way to answer the Golgari format, but it's been very effective, I think, in Jeskai decks for fighting against Golgari. So I thought, hey, can we make this faster? where I've been going through it. I've talked to a fair number of young mages who are battling in, I think this is the last PPTQ season ever, and they're saying, hey, made another top 8. Made another top 8, lost to Jeskai, expansion explosion twice. So that's been the refrain I've heard. And like, beat all the other Golgari guys, but expansion explosion, too good. So how do we break that paradigm?
Good question. Yeah. I don't know, man. I think expansion explosion is definitely a wild card that could potentially unseat these black-green decks. Just the amount of impact it can have. If somebody's sitting there trying to nickel and dime you with 2-for-1s here, 2 for there, and then you just 7-for-1 them with the, you know what I mean?
No, the thing that's insane about this card is you're like, nug you for 7, draw another expansion explosion, nug you for 8, game. Like that's the thing, right? Because it just gets you to the card that kills them, right? It just back-to-backs. You can't block it, right? If you're not blue, you can't interact with it hardly at all. So, I think that is a place that the format can go. And, obviously the Golgari decks don't cast it, but I think there are a fair number of other decks who could cast it. Right now, it looks like Jeskai is the leading candidate, but there are at least 2 other strategies, I think, that can embrace this card. Dude,
this is... I mean, I think we should talk on the expansion explosion, but I just can't... I can't help but wonder if these Golgari decks could adopt some other form of endgame to, really take advantage of... a more mild version of expansion explosion themselves to break open the mirror.
Yeah.
But in terms of actual expansion explosion, so for instance, the refrigerator came in 6th with a Jeskai deck that basically it is kind of full on Jeskai because it's not just Crackling Drake is obviously a pretty, defined. It's a lot of blue and a lot of red. But when you also need white early for Justice Strike, the Boros Terminate, and then Teferi, it's definitely a pretty, pretty full mix. Plus Cleansing Nova and Deafening Clarion, obviously. Yeah, what do you think of the style of Jeskai, by the way?
There's some ambition here. That's what I'd say. I think that if you're going to go the Crackling Drake route, like the Refrigerator has gone, I think you want something like a Banefire or a Fight with Fire so that you can close real quick. Right, so
Crackling Drake closes pretty quick.
Yeah, but if I go Crackling Drake, I can kill you that turn oftentimes with a Banefire or a Fight with Fire, and you can't probably do that with an Expansion Explosion. An Expansion Explosion is back-to-back when you have 11 mana in play already, right? So a Banefire can just go much, much further faster, I think, and, they think they have...
You would want Banefire instead of just another Expansion Explosion?
I think that... first of all, it depends on your style, right? I think that
my style.
I think that if you're a Crackling Drake deck is different than if you're some other kind of Jeskai decks. I think Expansion Explosion is awesome. I think it's very good in Jeskai. I think that if you're playing Crackling Drake, that you might optimize your card choices to kind of kill really fast because the Crackling Drake can help you with that.
And, I don't know, man.
No.
Because another way to put it, if I'm playing Crackling Drake, I want to optimize to not be so focused on killing fast because it gives me more time to get more spells into my graveyard so that my Crackling Drake is more mana efficient.
See, I'm not talking about just casting a Crackling Drake on turn 4 and hoping for the best.
Neither am I. I'm saying that, I think Banefire is a card that is well suited to fast decks, whereas Expansion Explosion is a little bit more suited to slower decks.
Well,
I don't think Crackling Drake makes the deck so fast.
I mean, fast for a Jeskai control deck. I think
I don't think so. I think it's just low opportunity cost, efficient card, and even if they kill it, it's not the end of the world. It's not like you're so fast just because you have the ability to win a game fast sometimes. Like it's, yeah, I don't know, man. I think Expansion I'm just trying to wrap my head around when I would want Banefire instead of Expansion Explosion in a deck like this.
So, obviously, Expansion Explosion is the far superior card if you have access to a bunch of colors, and if you, I mean, oftentimes you actually just want to use.
Or are you talking about a red deck that has blue in it, or not? I mean, like
no, we're talking about in Jeskai, right now, that like. It has blue, right? So it can cast the other side. But I think like Banefire is good when like I think like just being able to cast it for 6 and have it be reliable is a valuable thing. And then also in sideboarded games, but they're quite different, right? So they both are X to the face, but they're I think
you would generally prefer to Banefire somebody for 6. Instead of drawing 3 cards and dealing 3 damage at instant speed?
I think it depends. I can imagine having eight copies of these cards in my deck.
Dude, I'm saying that, like, even at 6, it's either 2 lightning bolts or a lightning bolt and an ancestral recall. Which do you want? Do you want an ancestral recall or a second lightning bolt?
To be fair, that's a 7 cast. Oh, you're right. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll have to go with the second light.
I think the key to Banefire is that it doesn't need blue mana. So, like, if you're playing a deck that doesn't have blue mana, it's way better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know, man. I get the nostalgia value.
I think Expansion Explosion is the truth. That said, I think Banefire is also the truth. They're just different. They're like they live in different places.
That's not how truth works.
I think Banefire is mostly a great sideboard card, and Expansion Explosion is mostly a great main deck card.
Okay. Well, we're halfway there.
I'm the one who's playing Expansion Explosion in my deck.
If you want to see Banefire out of the sideboard, then we should take a look at the 10th place list from the PTQ. Nickel, NIK93L. So Nickel 93 here has a red deck that does the whole Experimental Frenzy and, Chain Whirler, a bunch of, just random red creatures. But the twist is 2 Justice Strikes main deck off of a 4 Sacred Foundry, 4 Clifftop Retreat, 1 Plains splash. And then in the sideboard, a couple of copies of Deafening Clarion, a couple of copies of Tajik, a couple of copies of Justice Strike, a couple of copies of Conclave Tribunal, and an extra Plains. And obviously there are the Banefires, or else, why would it be so topical? But my question to you is this a style of red deck that you would be more interested in?
Not really. I don't think you get that much from the white. That's like the Justice Strikes in the main deck are the main draw from the white, and it's just not enough for me. I'd rather see Treasure Map in the main deck. Although I would concede that Deafening Clarion is a huge upgrade against go wide decks than just being able to deal 2 to non-pirates.
Yeah, I think the Deafening Clarion is an excellent option, but I think that having 9 or 10 white sources not necessarily the best.
Yeah, I think I would point out Dismissive Pyromancer's presence here. So that's a card that does 2 things, reasonably well. One of them, obviously, is you can change the top card of your library when Experimental Frenzy is already in play. And then separately, that ability to 2R tap and sacrifice the Dismissive Pyromancer to deal 4 does help you, I think, lace together some multiple sources of damage to kill big creatures, right? Like, you're not reliant on top decking consecutive burn spells. Like, you can go like, all right, I'll get 2 from a shock and then 4 from the Pyromancer to kill a 6/6. Like, that's a thing that you can do with some level of reliability. So I think that's cool. One of the things that is a downside to Nickel's deck is not just the addition of white with, again, a Plains in the main deck, but Nickel's playing 24 land, right, which is very high for a red deck of this style in the main deck.
Yep.
That's because we're seeing an addition of a plains and addition of white mana just for baseline consistency. So these are, in my opinion, substantial drawbacks to adding that white. But again, super respect the Clarion. I think you'd certainly rather have Clarion than other options when you're playing against decks that have any ability to buff their 1/1s.
If he did play the Treasure Maps main deck, that would be potentially additional sources of white, albeit on a delay. And man, treasure mapping when you have Frenzy is that's just clean living.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
A flip treasure map with a Frenzy in play is also very good. I mean, you can draw, you can make extra mana for just keep your cards going. It's you're on the beach and your opponent's incinerated by the sun and spells.
Another red deck with Banefire, Ra-Po, 15th place. Ra-Po's list, very non-traditional. Skips the small red creatures, no 1-drops. His only 2-drops are the obvious first place Runaway Steamkin, and then also some dismissive Pyromancers. He's got 4 treasure map, 4 experimental frenzy main deck. His burn, in addition to 4 lightning strikes and 2 shocks, he's got 3 fight with fires, a lava coil, and a bane fire with 2 more in the board. Also, Siege Gang Commander X2 plus 4 Rekindling Phoenix for a much bigger top end than we usually see out of experimental frenzy decks.
So I kind of want to reserve judgment because I have no actual practical experience of playing a deck of this style, but the whole point of having Frenzy in play is that you can just cast multiple cards per turn, right? So you don't need to invest 5 mana in a card like Siege Gang Commander. You could just cast a bunch of cards instead and just continue to build your resources. So I'm a little torn on that. And then plus, with no 1-drops and just kind of a weird distribution of 2-drops between 3 Dismissive Pyromancer and 4 Runaway Steamkin, you're basically just guaranteeing the Steamkin is dead, right? Like, so if the opponent has any early game removal, they're going to kill your guy because you just kill the Steamkin. It's insane, right? But sometimes they can't because they already killed like 2 1-drops or something, or like the Ashino Pyromancer or something. So it'll live. So I think like this deck is just kind of chunky and has 24 land and I don't know. It's just not. It's not exploiting like the sheer amount of volume of card advantage you can get out of the Frenzy, in my opinion.
Well, if you want to see a deck that's exploiting the Frenzy a lot harder, check out the 17th place finisher Mel VP, who played a green-red experimental frenzy deck, sort of in the vein of what I was alluding to last week with green for the ability to reset the top of your deck with stuff like Jade Light Ranger, Merfolk Branchwalker, and in his case, actually commune with dinosaurs and Thunderherd Migration. So there's a lot of green ability to reset the top of your deck. And then even Vivian Reed, in a weird way. It's sideways because it's not like totally that good. But and then he's also got 4 treasure maps. And this part is actually a really cool innovation. Wayward Swordtooth. 4 copies of Wayward Swordtooth. How much harder do you get to Frenzy when you can play 2 land a turn?
Yeah, so
not only do you get to Frenzy so much harder, the Swordtooth turns into a 5/5 threat, before not too long.
Yeah, so the Swordtooth undoes the Frenzy's only vulnerability, right? So the thing, the bet is you get Frenzy in play as long as you don't get brickwalled on consecutive lands. You just get to keep playing Magic, right? You just get to snowball and snowball over your opponent. But man, the ability to just a second land, I'll play it, and in fact, it's going to help me get the City's Blessing. That is very, very powerful, and obviously, a couple things on the Swordtooth. One of them is 5/5 for 3. Not bad. Second thing, if you haven't played against the Swordtooth very much, once you've got the City's Blessing, you've got the City's Blessing. So it's not like you have the Swordtooth, all right, I'm going to, kill one of your creatures with a cast down to turn off the Swordtooth. No. All future Swordtooths are now online, even if you get them below the City's Blessings threshold.
Oh, yeah. Plus, it's a dinosaur. which means you get to play Thunderherd Migration, which is an exciting card, and getting to play Commune with Dinosaurs. You know, like you obviously Commune with Dinosaurs is going to hit land a great deal anyway, but when you have 10 dinosaurs in your deck, it's actually going to, you can convert it into a legitimate threat a reasonable amount of the time.
Oh, yeah. I actually really like this deck because what if you pretended it wasn't an Experimental Frenzy deck for a second, right? Like, let's just pretend that this is a green-red monster deck, and the kind of monsters we play are dinosaurs. It's actually a serviceable deck. You're like, oh, okay. So this deck can go like Llanowar Elves, and, you get Jade Light Ranger or Wayward Swordtooth, and then you're like just playing big guys. When Regisaur Alpha is in play, all of a sudden Carnage Tyrant's ridiculous, right? So it's just got this whole half of the deck. But then, I think Experimental Frenzy is less of a combo Necropotence here and more of actually a future sight. When the red deck plays Experimental Frenzy, it's just about a tonnage of fast stuff. When this deck
Outpost sieging almost.
Yeah, but when this deck plays Experimental Frenzy, it's like when Andrew Cuneo won the first ever Moto PTQ with Psychotog, right? It's like this progressive, strategic, completely different way of playing the same card. And not to mention he's exploiting it better, right? The fact that you have Wayward Swordtooth here just completely changes the Frenzy paradigm. Separately, I actually don't even know how Commune with Dinosaurs works when you have Frenzy, right? You change it, so let's say you're playing...
Well, so here's... Yeah, I was going to say, Commune with Dinosaurs doesn't... It doesn't give you the best, right up front because you end up putting in your hand.
Yeah.
But Commune with Dinosaurs can actually help get you to your action for the games where you don't have Experimental Frenzy. And in particular, Commune with Dinosaurs can help you find a Wayward Swordtooth. Once you're under the Frenzy, you're just kind of filtering.
Yeah.
But I think that once you're going, those extra cards you're building up, there's something that you can eventually do when you destroy your own Frenzy, like the play you alluded to earlier in the show. The Commune with Dinosaurs aspect, when you're actually under the Frenzy, it's like, who cares, right? You are just still going harder, right?
Yeah, I have to say, just playing Frenzy decks that have a decent amount of mana in play, you often feel just absolutely in control of the game with Fight with Fire. I think Fight with Fire has not yet gotten its full due as just a solid Magic card. It's like the red Hero's Downfall, and then it just also transforms into this insane kicker card. It's really good.
Yeah, when you're playing Wayward Swordtooth, isn't Fight with Fire just the best?
Oh, it's unbelievable. You
just want to do 10.
Yeah, you clear blockers, and then you also get them for a little, and then you attack them for 10. It's very powerful. The other thing I like about this particular strategy with its main deck Banefire and one sideboard Banefire is this is a perfect deck for just attacking straight into a Jeskai deck or a blue-white deck and getting settled. I would love to get settled with this deck. You're just going to have so many resources and you have stuff to do with it. And I think a lot of the time when you get settled, you're just like, oh, I was a weenie deck, so that was all my stuff, and I have one shock left in my hand. When you get settled in this deck, you're dropping Vivian Reed, or you have a big Frenzy turn set up, And
you set up. You don't get to just set up the turn. You might have a ton of mana, but how much do you have the turn set up? You're kind of at the mercy of what's on top.
Well, yeah, you have to also assume now that when you untap and play the Frenzy, it doesn't get countered. But if it hits, you have a lot of ways to play.
So one of the pieces of tension here is that so an advantage of Banefire over Fight with Fire is that when you're under the Frenzy, Fight with Fire can be a blocker.
Yep.
Now, once in a while you might just Fight with Fire your own Llanowar Elf or whatever, but
just to keep it going.
Yep. P.S. Demon Fire you.
So what do you think about the land count in this green-red deck? I kind of want to play 2 more Commune with Dinosaurs and cut 2 land. Is that insane?
Maybe. But, maybe not, because I want to just cut some land anyway.
Yeah.
So, if Commune with Dinosaurs has to be the first card that we play with, before in order to get the land count down. Great. I don't want to play 24 land in this deck.
Yeah, even though you have Carnage Tyrant, right?
Yeah, assuming that I have Carnage Tyrant. I'm not committed to the Carnage Tyrant. It's fine.
I would sideboard Carnage Tyrant. I think I'd rather just have more.
I would definitely sideboard.
And Murphy.
Yeah, I'm into sideboarding it. I just meant the main deck. I think I'd rather have more Jadelight Rangers like you.
Yeah, because I think
I'm in for Jadelight Ranger.
I think like this deck, if you hit your early game in this deck and you just survive to like turn 5 or 6, you just have better stuff than most opponents, right? Like I have a decent life total and I probably have 2 or 3 cards in hand. It's going to be solid. So I don't want to be stuck with a 6-drop in my opening hand when I could have had a 2-for-1 on turn 2.
Totally feel the same way. Is there any chance that you would Adventurous Impulse instead of Commune with Dinosaurs?
Yes. Yes, but no. Like I don't know. Like how
you get it though, right? I mean,
yeah, I do. I mean, Commune with Dinosaurs does not. It's not particularly synergistic with Jadelight Ranger and Merfolk Branchwalker.
Right.
It's just not.
And I think that the more you move away from the dinosaurs, you got to really start to look at Adventurous Impulse instead. It's obviously not as good at finding the super duper awesome dino. Phyrexian Negator, only his drawback is that instead of having a drawback, you have exploration.
So I think like Melv.P was like, look, I'm going to go hard on Swordtooth, and so Melv.P just played like all this extra Swordtooth, decorations with Thunderherd Migration and Commune with Dinosaurs. But I think you might be right. I think it might be better to just go a different direction and just play more fundamentally strong creatures instead of the dinosaur theme, and then just like live with the Swordtooth being awesome and ignore the fact that it's a dinosaur. It's just an awesome guy instead.
I mean, you do at a certain point have to give up the rampant growth, though, right?
Oh yeah,
like that's the real trade-off.
Yeah, but I think that I'd be willing to give up the rampant growth in order to get like 2 more Merfolk Branchwalkers, right? And how much better is the rampant growth than just playing? I mean, I'm going to say District Guide, and then you're going to send me a slap all the way from
No, you don't want to play District Guide. See, here's part of the problem with Jadelight Ranger and Merfolk Branchwalker. A problem that you don't really see with the rampant growth. Those cards all suck under Experimental Frenzy.
Oh, that's true. What about the 1/3 guy that taps to draw a land?
It still sucks. It puts the land in your hand.
But when you're under Frenzy, putting the land in your hand when the land is on top is good. Right?
Oh! You're talking about the 2. You're talking about the 2-cost 1/3 that lets you. Yeah, that could be okay.
And that guy's just like a terrible Jame Day Tome the rest of the time, and he's fine. He only costs 2.
Yeah, he's not the worst Jame Day Tome actually, because you get to time it with your treasure maps.
Yeah, and he blocks Viashido Pyromancer just fine.
You know what I mean? Like if you're treasure mapping, he's good with treasure map.
I think he's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. I think he's good. I think you might be right. That's kind of an interesting idea. I would try that. Yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, Fight with Fire, awesome in this deck. Awesome. Like, even if we disagree with some of the details, I think that Melv.P really had something going on with these decisions.
Here's a crazy idea. Scape Shift. Not necessarily this exact version, but just think about it. If you're playing Scape Shift, you could like have so few land in your deck to brick you. If you just had like a runaway Steamkin so that your cards are all free and you just go.
Like when Nassif, one of Nassif's 270,000 constructed top 8s was that one where he just like took all the land out of his deck and then, right? Like, what did he play? Like the second turn card, just like take all the land out of my deck.
Yep.
Because he just like played with the land that was in his opening hand, and then he would kill you.
Mana Severance. Yeah. Boom.
Who would have thought that card was like the best card to play on turn 2?
Card advantage, buddy. Implied. Yeah. Card advantage.
The card advantage of your opponent never drawing another card on account of being dead on turn 3. That's the kind of card advantage he had.
Another kind of interesting option for Experimental Frenzy. This is probably terrible, but What about the Expel, the March of the Multitudes? Okay, so hear me out. Let's suppose that you're playing like a bunch of token making.
This is an ambitious mana base, right? But I'll allow it.
Well, is it though?
Yes.
Like,
it's double white.
You don't even need to have white mana. You know, like in the event that you had some hybrid cards.
You had some hybrid creatures. All right. I'll allow it. I'm listening.
I don't know, man. I just think March of the Multitudes. If you had March of the Multitudes going with the Dominaria, you know, like you get Earthcraft, Song of the Frailes. Like, obviously, March of the Multitudes implied already has because of Convoke, but I'm saying that, like, once you March of the Multitudes on your opponent's end step and then you untap and you have Song of Frailes, you have so much mana. Maybe this just doesn't involve Experimental Frenzy, but...
I think, like, those other aspects are powerful. I don't know why it's good with Frenzy.
Because that's something to do with a bazillion mana.
So... All right, I have an ambitious idea. I was going to flesh it out, you know, myself later this week and see. Maybe sleeve it up for F&M. I wasn't sure yet. Here's my combo. It's a 3-card combo, but you can get any 2 of the cards. Well, not any 2. You can get particular 2 of the cards. True Fire Captain and Star of Extinction. Wait for it. You can also play Sunbird's Invocation and then cast Star of Extinction. The star will cast the True Fire Captain, and then you're on like popcorn. This is horrible because the True Fire Captain is just so killable,
yes, among other reasons.
Yeah, I don't know. 2-card kill,
dude. What about 1,000-Year Storm?
Oh, is that the? I hesitate to say the Mind's Desire enchantment.
No. It's like I mean, it's sort of a Mind's Desire enchantment, but it's kind of a Mirari, like a super duper Mirari.
So how?
Like they're kind of just. Well, like if you just play 1,000-Year Storm, why would your opponent not be dead when you untap? How many cards could you possibly... Okay, like here's an example. Let's suppose that you played... Like, let's imagine that your deck was stuff that's about as good as, like, Lightning Strike.
Yeah.
The first Lightning Strike does 3. The second one does 6. The third one does 9.
That's most of the game already, right?
So, like, what if instead of Lightning Strike, you had some cards that were, like, you were just playing... Like, if you just play 3 cards in the same turn, you're getting 6 spells. Whether you're drawing cards, whether you're doing damage, why isn't 1,000-Year Storm just, like, a incredibly powerful endgame, a way to just go over the top?
All right, here's an idea. I think it hybridizes with your idea. I was thinking about Frenzy decks, right? And I was like, well, what's a way to break Frenzy that's different than people have been doing before? What if you played all jump starts, right? Like, so that your cards in your hand actually had utility for whatever jump start was in your graveyard, right? Doesn't matter. Like, you're just always jump starting, so you can... A lot of the jump starts change the top card of your library, right? Now, you could play that with 1,000-Year Storm because the jump starts are actually... You can just go... cast a bunch of spells and then cast a Lightning Strike, right? Like the jump starts just get you to spell 5 or whatever, and then you get them for 15.
Yeah, but what does this have to do with Experimental Frenzy?
Well, because it's like just a different engine. Like you could play both engines in the same deck, is what I'm saying, right? Like the Frenzy locks your hand theoretically, right?
I think that a lot of the cards you're talking about are not going to work well with Frenzy. Like for instance, Radical Idea.
Yeah.
Not good with Experimental Frenzy. Like, draw a card that you can't play.
Yeah, that's a thing, but it's in your graveyard now. So now
right, and then you can later draw a card you can't play.
Oh, so what you're saying is all those times people let me draw 3 with my risk factor, it would just be that times 12.
Yeah, I think that I think this sounds sweet. I just don't know that Experimental Frenzy is part of it. Maybe it is. But I think that Thousand Year Storm, when you've just got stuff like Radical Idea and Risk Factor, man, are you just going to go nuts. Like, for instance, what if you had both Runaway Steamkin and Goblin Electromancer? So that you had 2 different cards that were kind of rebatey? Like, it's not going to be hard to play 4 spells in the same turn and then kill your opponent.
Oh,
and like the backup plan is like you have this amazing tome where you're effectively getting not only extra cards, but you get to play them for 0 mana.
Yeah, it's just like a Pyromancer's Ascension, right? Like, it's super powerful if it's in play and online. I think that the challenge is like you have to get to 6, you got to play it, and then you got to untap with it, right? Those are the
yes.
But once all those conditions are fulfilled, you're right. You should probably demolish somebody.
Yes. Yeah, this just seems like a more exciting endgame. I mean, I guess it's like, there's also Expansion Explosion and Niv Mizzet or whatever, but like Thousand Year Storm seems so intense.
You know what card is awesome with this?
What's that?
Opt.
Sure. I mean, like, I think that there's this question of how much do you just want to play cheap cards? Like, Opt seems awesome anyway, keep it going and everything, But there's also just, Opt just seems amazing. Let's just get that out of the way. But outside of that, you want to have some amount of, or you might consider some question of like rituals and burn, stuff that's proactive. Because like one way is to start with stuff like Opt and then transition into burn. Opt so that you can fuel it cheap, get the storm count up, and then just finish them off with burn.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Where you're just like, okay, there's, I play a couple cantrips, and, like, for instance, you could do, if you shock for 8 and then lightning strike for 15, they're dead. Which then you would just need to have 3 spells earlier on. But also,
let's just think about how much mana that is, right? So just for sake of argument, 3 opts, a shock, and a lightning strike is 3, 4, 6 only? That's very plausible.
And if you had a Goblin Electromancer, the amount of rebate you get on some of these cards, and if you had jumpstart cards so that you could just have a stockpile in your graveyard of spells to get the storm going so that it's just deterministic. That's part of the reason why I'm not even so sure that you need that much card draw, because like as long as you've got cards to discard to your jumpstart cards, like if you just jumpstart a couple times, like a Radical Idea, for instance, is like it does the work that Opt does if you have an Electromancer in play, or if you're putting Runaway Steamkin, then like there's also stuff like Tormented Voice, or any of the like Chart a Course could be really good. Chart a Course is exciting with Runaway Steamkin and Goblin Electromancer anyway, in terms of just if you have some creatures so that you can really just do the 2-for-1.
Like, this seems fantastic to me. I want to figure out how I can tap out for Thousand Year Storm and not get it Assassin's Trophied. That's the right, because it's
that's what you were supposed to do that part.
Okay,
like you come up with the answer to that one, because I got nothing at the moment.
I mean, you could play Grixis, and you could just duress them before you play the Thousand Year Storm. That's the thing you can do. Thought
Erasure is pretty good. Thought Erasure is pretty good. The Distress Thoughtseize card. You could also just maybe not care. Like, what if your deck is not entirely, like, what if your deck has against the people that have Assassin's Trophy, Your plan is to beat them with Expansion Explosion. Because, like, Expansion Explosion is actually quite good with the combo plan, right? Like, you can copy one of your burn spells, right?
Oh, wow.
And, like you can, like, not only could you just copy one of your burn spells, when you start going, like, it functions like a burn spell, but it could also, like, it's just like a good card. Like, what if you just Expansion Explosion their Assassin's? I guess it's only yours. But, like, no, you could do Expansion Explosion. You could Expansion their Assassin's Trophy and get them. You know, like, I think Expansion seems exciting. And then, obviously, Explosion gives you a way to go over the top of these black-green decks.
I mean, you could just Expansion Chemist's Insight, and then you get, like, you know, an extra 2 mana value. That's not bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Chemist's Insight works well with the plan. It's a good backup plan, and it works well with the Electromancer. I think the more stuff like Radical Idea and Chemist's Insight we play, the more the Steamkin starts to look like less good of an option. So that's something to keep an eye on. Yeah. And it's very possible we don't play it, you know. I
feel like Goblin Electromancer is obviously so powerful, as is Steamkin. I just think, like, if you play him in decks like these with just no other lightning rods, like, they're just always dead. You know, that's the thing that I'd be concerned about. Like, if somebody
say that, but the same thing happens with the Storm decks in Modern. They just play nothing but the Electromancer.
They play it on turn 2. You either take your turn off to kill it or you're dead, right?
Right.
But that's different than here. Like, we don't have a turn 3 kill, right? So if you play it on turn 2, it's probably dead, right? Or they don't care because you can't get them badly enough on that turn. Or you wait until, like, a very late turn and then play it, and, you know, they might still kill it, right? Because they have 5 open mana. So it's very different than in Modern. In Modern, you know, you don't kill that Baral. The Baral's got you.
Yep.
But I like this 1,000-year storm idea you've got. I think this might be better to work on than my mono green Expansion Explosion idea. But I got to tell you, I had a lot of gates. I was searching for gates. You know, that's the only way that you could do this. I mean, you need UURR in a deck that all the other cards are green. It's gates. You're getting some work out of that district guide. I do have a Boros Guild gate also, so that I can cast the Clarion after sideboarding. That's a card in my sideboard.
Man, what else can we do? There's no rituals or anything, right? So, like,
I mean, can you imagine, like, if Manamorphos were legal? Like, that would be, it would be on.
Dude, how are we doing? We need another. We need some cards we need some spells that cost 1. This deck seems so sick.
I think, like, maybe it's just like a tap out tradesies deck, and then, like, sometimes you just go 1-for-1 with them and stop. Like, you could just stop their 2-for-1 guys with, like, I don't know, a Surveil Counterspell or an Ionize, and you're ahead instead of them being ahead.
I want to be careful. I don't know how many cards we want to play that you can't just use proactively.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, but now we're all in. That's the thing. If you're the deck that, well, no. How about this? You can always discard those cards to your jump starts. You know, always
yeah, but I'm saying I want to be careful about how many of those we play.
I think you gotta have some. I think those 3 casting cost counterspells are too good to not try in this strategy, because we have to live to get the 6-drop in play. That's the rub.
Yeah, definitely. What about, man? So there's plenty of little cantrips that cost 2 that are not too bad, like Anticipate or Chart a Course. We could probably play, like, a little bit of that stuff, right?
Yeah, I assumed we would play Anticipate.
So it's not the right way, but, like, if somehow we were playing a deck that could take advantage of this, Crash Through, 1 mana cantrip, and, like, the 1-cost Jumpstart card giving you 2 different ones. Like, there is an angle that you could go where your plan is to just go 1-1-1-1-1 kill you, that's your untap plan, is that you're just gonna. Is there anything better to copy 5 or 6 times than like Lightning Strike?
I was just assuming Lightning Strike was the way to go.
The pinnacle.
Yeah, or some proxy for that, right? Like maybe one thing that you could see. The thing,
there's a lava spike, right? Like if you had some kind of a lava spike, that's
you had me at lava spike.
Well, it's more mana efficient. Like that's what you really want, right?
I mean, it's a difference in 1 mana at a point where we probably already have 7, right? Like once you're casting multiple cantrips in a turn, you're going to hit your 7th drop. The thing that I'm concerned about is, can we play cards like Treasure Map? Like Treasure Map is a stop in the late game, but it's actually a pretty strong facilitator in the early game.
Well, I'm not talking about with Experimental Frenzy. I'm talking about you're saying just because, what do you mean by that it's a stop?
Like it doesn't copy. It doesn't.
Like, I don't think that you need it to be. I really don't think you're going to need all your cards to be the engine. I think you're going to find that it's like. I bet you're going to go way, way over the top as long as you've got enough mana. I think mana is going to be the bottleneck, outside of just like you have to live after tapping out on turn 6.
I mean, maybe like. It's about untapping and then playing 2 Steamkin or something, right? Like, all right, I'm going to play Steamkin.
Tapping and playing 2 Steamkin?
Yeah. Play Steamkin, right?
I think
Steamkin gets a counter, and then you just try to go off with the Steamkin in play.
I think that if you spend 4 mana on the Steamkin, you're not going to save 4 mana often enough to be worth the trouble. Okay. I think you got to have the Steamkin or the Electromancer already in play. Or the big thing is if we can just let me give you an example. Convoke spells you could play for 0, right? And obviously that doesn't line up with Is It? But I just wonder, like, what kind of spells can we play with that will allow us to here's another example. Flood of Recollection. It gives you extra spells. Like it's like a cantrip, and it gives you extra spells, but it's not getting you a mana advantage. Like it's not giving you a mana advantage. I'm wondering what kind of cards can you actually play to give you a mana advantage, so that you can more reliably know that you're going to play 5 spells in the same turn. And it's got to, I think you have to actually save mana up front. You can't just, I don't know
what you're saying. Not just have some sort of mana production capability. Okay,
so here's another example. Not that it's right for this, but if somehow we were playing with Invert, and we just were normally playing it for the Invert, like the fact that there's this mode that would let you just play it for 1 mana for no effect is actually quite good. That's the thing, right? Because if you could just turn all your cards into 1 mana do-nothings, you would have a very, very powerful dimension to the deck, so that you could just reliably play a bunch of cards and then lightning strike them 6 times or 7 times.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm just thinking, like, do you just always try? There's just no depth. Like, your fail state isn't bad in this deck, right? Because if you go for it and you don't win on that turn, it's okay. You probably still have like 4 cards in hand, right?
Right. Like, yeah.
Like you just keep defending yourself. That's
right. It hasn't gone that badly for you. Like if you're, instead of just doing 18 to their face like a Tendril's just short, you Plague Wind to them and then do 6 to their face.
Yeah, that's super fun.
And then you pick it up next turn.
I mean, I could just totally imagine just like having 10 land in play at some point. You're just being like, all right, opt Fight with Fire. That's good, right?
Yep. So I don't know, man. I do sort of suspect though that maybe there's a way to make the finishing blow deal 4 or deal 5, because like if you end with like for instance like a 4 mana deal 4, it only needs to be your 5th card that turn to do the full 20. And if your 3rd card was Shock, your 4th card could be Lightning Strike, and your opponent's dead.
So is Risk Factor just like way too inconsistent? I mean, you might play it anyway, right? But
you might play it anyway, and that would be the thing. But it doesn't finish the job.
So yeah, I mean, but it's got to be fantastic when
it's a sweet third spell when you still have, like, if it's, you know what I mean? Like if you play it,
they got to give you 12 or something, right?
Like if they give you 9 extra cards, like the odds that you do something dope with those 9 cards for your finishing, I bet Risk Factor is great. So I don't know. This is the area that I'm most excited in. Is some sort of a it deck that ostensibly. Oh, dude, Spit Flame doesn't hit players. That's so brutal. Anyway, back at the in the PTQ, did any of the other I guess. Actually, what if we took a look? Like, what if First Shot's 19th place deck was a little bit of a source of inspiration here? It's an Izzet deck, and instead of Teferi Splash, he's got Goblin Electromancer. And then this is a deck that already has Shock, Lightning Strike, Opt, Radical Idea, Expansion Explosion, Chemist's Insight. But it doesn't have the 1,000-Year Storm.
I don't know what he's getting out of Goblin Electromancer that he might not be getting out of, like, Niv Mizzet Perun. Like, I don't know. This doesn't seem like an insane Electromancer deck to me at all. Am I missing?
Oh, but I'm saying, like, what if we...
start here and then add that...
What if we took out the cards like Shivan Fire that are not part of the big storm? Although, actually, Shivan Fire costs 1. Costing 1 is, like, a super dope ability.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, just Plague Winding someone might be pretty awesome.
Yeah. These are all good questions.
There is a deck I think we might as well mention and then check it out for the app. Is just back up to the top 8, Young Prodigy's 3rd place deck, which is just pure as the driven snow.
Yep.
Mono white beatdown. At Danto Vanguard, 4 copies of Banalish Marshal, facilitated by not 19, not 20, but 21 basic planes.
Yep. I mean, this is a deck list only Paul Rietzel could love. I guess Craig Wesco would love it too.
Really? You think Wesco would love this one?
I think Wesco would love a deck with 21 planes, yeah.
I think, like, if I were playing this deck, I would find a way to get, like, 8 green dual lands that don't impact my ability to play my land untapped very much, and then just have marches. Because this deck already has Banalish Marshal and other Convoke cards. What do you think about that? Just play marches.
It's an interesting idea. Yeah, that's a reasonable idea. Besides, I'm not even sure that even with it probably doesn't work with this low of a land count, but like splashing green does give you some options regarding like when the game stretches out a little bit, like if you play the Angel. But if you're going to stay this low to the ground, you really want to make sure your land on turn 1 comes into play untapped.
That's true.
And this is a deck with Legion's Landing, Skymarcher Aspirant, Hunted Witness, Dauntless Bodyguard. This is a lot of 1-drops. This is like a Pat Cox style white aggro deck.
Yeah, so there's a high number of 1 casting cost, proactive plays you make in this deck. The thing that I'm a little curious about is only 1 copy of Pride of Conquerors. Don't you think, like, maybe like this deck would enjoy more copies of Pride of Conquerors?
It could. So part of the tension, I think, is that you don't naturally just have the City's Blessing all that often. And I think +1/+1 is just not really doing all that much for you. And part of the issue is that your creatures are part of your mana base. Like, this deck is almost entirely 1s and 2s, right? It's got Banalish Marshal at the top in History of Benalia. But, like, Venerated Luxodon is really more of a free, like that's the best card in this deck, right? Like,
it's like a 0 casting cost Gear Hulk,
right? And between Conclave Tribunal and Venerated Luxodon, you want to make sure that you don't play too many cards that don't play them. And this deck has one Pride of Conquerors, one Baffling End, and that's it. Every other card in this deck is either a land or other than the Convoke cards. But every non-Convoke card, even the Convoke cards, I mean, the Luxodon could help. But the point is that you want to make sure that the Luxodon and the Conclave Tribunal are just so amazing in this deck. But I don't know. It could be that you've got room to give, because I don't know that you need to have 58 out of 60 on plan.
I'm pretty impressed that Young Prodigy finished third in this sea of Golgari. This deck does not look like the deck I would want to sleeve up if I thought all my opponents were going to be just awesome 2-for-1 blockers up until 6.
Yeah, I'm wondering, just how fast was he actually able to come out?
I mean, I think he just gets a little extra impact from cards like Knight of Grace, depending on which creatures the opponent had, just get 4 extra damage in or something. But it's not, it doesn't look to me like the strategy you want if you're going to expect the format to stay like it was in this top 8. Because this looks like,
does it? I don't know. I'm not so sure that it's that bad against Golgari. My worry would be if you ever had to face a Chain Whirler.
Oh, well. Yeah, this isn't even the green version, right? The Chain Whirler is fantastic against even the green version still. So, also...
but this version has Dauntless Bodyguard, Hunted Witness, Remorseful Cleric, Skymarcher Aspirant, and that's to say nothing of Adanto Vanguard taxing your life total and Legion's Landing. I mean, this is Chain Whirler is going to demolish you.
Yeah, the thing that's worse here is that at least the green deck is just losing tokens. This is actually losing real pieces of cardboard. But
that's actually the thing I think was so smart is there were no Chain Whirlers. Where are the Chain Whirlers?
You can't expect that to stay, right?
Well, you're the one who said if the metagame stayed. That's my point, is that the metagame, I think that this deck is secretly hoping to play against the Golgari deck. It's probably behind, but at least they don't have the Chain Whirler.
Well, that's our next project. Goblin Chain Whirler Golgari.
All right, you do that, and I'll get the 1,000-Year Storm together.
Okay.
See you next week, man.
Night, Patrick.